Modern video games are long, right? Multiplayer games like Fortnite and Overwatch can easily be played for hundreds of hours. Meanwhile, single player games have a habit of going long too. Take the Witcher series. According to the website How Long to Beat, the second game is 24 hours long and the third game is 51 hours. That's not including the substantial DLC. Legend of Zelda has managed to get longer over time as well, from 15 hours in 1991, 26.5 hours in 1998, 37.5 hours in 2006, and then 50 hours in 2017 with Breath of the Wild. Even these big prestige PlayStation cinematic titles have a habit of getting longer as well, with the two Last of Us games jumping from 14.5 hours to 24 hours, whilst God of War moved from a 9-hour game to a 21-hour game. Of course, there's nothing wrong with games going long. You could argue it is good for the consumer, more value for money, but often these games include a lot of grinding, lots of repetition, which can be cathartic if you're in the mood, but it can feel like a waste of time if you just want to get to the heart of the game. Indie games have recently filled that hole of short and sweet games. Celeste is a manageable 8 hours, whilst games like Donut County and Untitled Goose Game could be completed in a single sitting. Roguelikes like Enter the Gungeon and Hades, and games developed for arcades like House of the Dead and Time Crisis could be completed in about an hour, but realistically it'll take the player dozens of hours to hone their skills before they can complete the game. Rhythm games fulfill that short and sweet game criteria pretty nicely, with games like Parappa the Rapper, Jamalami, Space Channel 5, Sayonara Wild Hearts. These games do require some degree of repetition to learn each song, but typically your progress does save from stage to stage. These sorts of games really do scratch that itch of games that can be completed in one evening, games that are fun to come back to year after year. And for me, Lilac Wars, or as it is known in most regions, Star Fox 64, is probably my favourite short and sweet game. It is all killer, no filler. It has a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling. The game is on rails and predictable, so stages can be learnt, but there's also degrees of unpredictability thanks to scenarios changing depending on which crew members survive the stage. My one problem with Lilac Wars though is this: I've played it too much. Or more accurately, that I need other games to satisfy that need, so that return playthroughs of Lilac Wars are less frequent and thus more meaningful. The big issue though is that nothing really hits that sweet spot quite like Lilac Wars. I have Gitaroo Man as my go-to rhythm game that I play through around once a year. That definitely helps, but I need something else like Lilac Wars. Star Fox on the Super Nintendo is kind of hard to go back to now. Star Fox Assault is just too long and dull. Star Fox Zero is a fun game, but it's always a headache relearning the game's obtuse control scheme. I felt all out of hope trying to find a game that would match up with Lilac Wars, until after years of searching I finally found this: Panzer Dragoon Orta. Panzer Dragoon Orta is a marvellous game. Its gameplay is at first very simple, but it hides lots of complexity. It's challenging but not punishing. There are small alternate routes through levels, but it's nothing like Lilac Wars. There's big memorable set pieces, bombastic bosses, a genuine and unique otherworldly scenario, location and enemy designs. And there are also these pockets of quiet, of peace and tranquility. The game also has a very convoluted story about dragons, android uprising, a tyrannical empire, and indigenous tribes being caught in this crossfire. It also has a detailed bestiary, lots of lore, an appendix, an encyclopedia, a really pretentious and indulgent side story. You can even unlock the first game in the series, Sega Saturn's 1995 release Panzer Dragoon, and play it in its entirety. However, I will admit that the first Panzer Dragoon has not aged too well. To some extent this is due to technical limitations, meaning that the draw distance and the frame rate aren't great, but honestly it's hard to go back to the oversimplicity of Panzer Dragoon after spending so much time with the gameplay of its sequel, Panzer Dragoon Orta. In Orta, the inputs are simple but the mechanics are deep. Hold the fire button to lock onto targets and shoot them down. press the fire button to rapidly shoot at bullets and destroy incoming projectiles. Use the shoulder buttons to swing the camera around 360 degrees and shoot and defend yourself from all angles. There are also 2 buttons to temporarily speed up or slow down your dragon. What's unique about this game, and where most of the game's depth comes from, is the ability to have your dragon switch instantly between 3 forms. There is the heavy wing form, where damage is high but mobility is low. The lock-on can only capture a small number of targets, and the special ability shoots out a single powerful laser. This form is best for bosses or for enemies with big health bars. Then there's the opposite, the glide wing. This form has low damage but high maneuverability. It has no lock-on but it does auto-aim, and it shoots at a rapid rate, which is great for shooting down incoming projectiles. Finally, there's the base wing, a happy midpoint between the previous 2 forms. Its biggest advantage is the fact that it can lock onto many targets at the same time, which is great for annihilating hordes of minions. What's really great about these 3 dragon forms is how differently they all feel, how useful they all are in different scenarios, and most importantly, how the level design strongly emphasizes switching between these 3 forms to survive each encounter and rack up as many points as possible. Seriously, these levels are so great at throwing these big beefy enemies your way that demands the heavy wing to be taken down. Then you're asked to weave between hazards, so you have to move on to the glide wing. Then a wave of non-hostile enemies appear and you must switch to the base wing to lock on and destroy them all to get an upgrade. Boss battles too make excellent use of the form switching mechanics, and even recontextualize the speed boost and speed break mechanic to have the dragon fly around all 4 corners of the boss, using it to change your dragon's position to avoid big wind-up attacks or to get a better shot at their weak point. This game's mechanics mesh wonderfully with the level and the boss design, ensuring that the game fulfills that essence of easy to learn but hard to master. It is also worth mentioning just how gorgeous this game looks. This is a game from 2003 and parts of it still look amazing today. This footage was captured on an Xbox Series S, but the game can be bought digitally for most Xbox consoles through the Xbox Store, or you can pick up a physical copy for a reasonable asking price. I would say this game is definitely worth your money, and in contrast to so many modern 50-hour games, I would definitely say it's worth your time too. There's a detailed scoring system and 3 levels of difficulty. I played this game for the first time only a few weeks ago and I've already completed the game 4 different times, with each playthrough taking an average of around 90 minutes to 2 hours. That's the length of a film, and it's the perfect length to play through this whole game in one sitting. I can't wait for the dust to settle on this game, so I can pick it up and play it all over again. Though my experience with Panzer Dragoon Orta is only a month old, I can already tell it's going to be joining this pantheon of other great one-night playthrough games. It's going to be the sort of game that I'm going to be completing once a year, sitting alongside stalwarts like Gitaru-Man and Lilac Wars. I held off on playing Panzer Dragoon Orta because I did not realise just how good it was. So much of the series' attention goes towards the 1998 Sega Saturn JRPG Panzer Dragoon Orta, with its now infamous asking price on the second-hand market. But Panzer Dragoon Saga shouldn't get all the attention. If you own any type of Xbox, I strongly suggest you give Panzer Dragoon Orta some much needed love. It's one hell of a way to spend an evening on the sofa, and it's one hell of a way to spend 2 hours. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.